This is All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on COVID safety protocols during assembly elections. The participants are Akshay Raut, former Director General of Election Commission of India, and Neelab Srivastav, journalist.
Elections for the last two phases out of the total 8 for the 294-member Assembly of West Bengal are scheduled to be held on April 26 and 29 respectively. The recent massive surge in the coronavirus infection cases across the country, including West Bengal, is a cause of major concern. Now, there have been demands from various quarters, including various political parties, to curtail the campaigning, clubbing the remaining phases, and also ensuring strict COVID-19 protocols so that the voters, the polling staff, everyone can be saved from contracting the infection. The poll panel in Delhi has already placed a ban on roadshows and foot marches, and it has also placed a cap on the number of persons attending the public meetings to 500. The Calcutta High Court very recently also expressed its dissatisfaction with the poll machinery over the enforcement of the health safety protocols with regard to COVID-19 during the polls process. And to bring the numbers into context, West Bengal data updated till Friday saw an highest single-day spike of over 12,000 cases, while 59 fresh deaths were registered. Now, today, the Election Commission, led by the Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Sushil Chandra, the Election Commissioner, Mr. Rajiv Kumar, held a meeting with senior officials of West Bengal, including the Chief Secretary, the ACS, Home, DGP, and various other senior functionaries related to the polls process. And it said that the enforcement under the DM Act or the Disaster Management Act during the public campaigns for election in the state have been less than adequate. Mr. Raut, what best measures can be taken to safeguard the voters, the polling staff, and people at large during the polls process that are being undertaken during the pandemic time?
We are talking about two things at the same time. One part of the solution to this peculiar problem that we are facing in this country, particularly in the context of election, is enforcement. When we talk about enforcement, it is the election management that is handled by Election Commission of India, percolating down to its field level representatives, district election officers, election observers, even booth level officers, nodal officers, and a whole paraphernalia that we know. And Election Commission from time to time, from the date of its constitution in 1950, it has held periodic elections every time, on time, and it has been an incredible journey, and it has earned global respect for that. And every election is held in very different situations, sometime in the face of natural disasters like earthquake, floods, sometime in the midst of fears of certain social violence, sometime in the midst of deprivation, poverty, and hunger. We have seen elections being conducted in the middle of high left-wing extremism action. And now we have, in 2020 and 2021, a unique and unprecedented global health crisis, which has become a larger crisis for India with the resurgence. And Election Commission of India has to navigate through all this. And it is not easy. It is very easy to say such and such things have not been done. It's easy to have the hindsight, the benefit of the hindsight, and say that these could have been done, those could have been done. But it's not easy to, in a tight time frame. We are talking about 26th February when the general election to 5 state assemblies were announced. And we are talking about May 2nd, on which date the counting will be held. And in this frame, with all the polling phases, of course, West Bengal, we have, as you just mentioned, we have 8 phases for the very valid reasons which Election Commission has put forth. To handle any problem that comes up, including this resurgent pandemic, which was not as much indicated in February 26 when the elections were announced. Any announcement planning is always contextual. And now we have a very scary scene across the country and in West Bengal for the purpose of election management. And as you said, 2 phases are still left. And we had the last 2 phases which also faced the brunt of this pandemic in bad action. So I have been observing as an old Election Commission timer. I have seen during the last few weeks the Commission trying to every day to innovate, to respond to the fast developing situation. Just I'll give one example here. See, on the medical side and on the response to the health and life side, we are now looking for what? Seats in hospital, testing facilities, reporting after the test. We are also looking at a nightmare scarcity and over demand for oxygen. So these are situations which the health machinery, the hospital, and the government at large is trying to answer. Let us look at the election management scenario. They have situations like big rallies, which could be super spreaders, or which could lead to some more infections. They have to protect the election process. They have to protect the voters. They have to protect the health and life of the polling personnel, who in the Indian context are massive in number. And they have to protect the will of people as represented in the holding of elections, and which are also determined by various provisions of constitution and law and statute. An election commission has the sacred duty to conduct elections in accordance with those rules and regulations. It can't do whimsically. I mean, today we have a situation in which certain political parties are saying that, okay, merge the phases because we have a problem in hand. In certain respect, that perhaps has a justification because, we are having a pandemic situation, and the sooner the election process is over, perhaps the less will be threat to health and life. But it's a very complex process. And all the dates of notification, date of polling, the campaign period, the hours before the poll, and then after that the counting, all are fixed according to certain rules and regulations. Certainly as a response, it is like make something a little better, you can't have a destruction on the other side. It is a very tightrope walk for the Election Commission of India. And I am seeing how, you just mentioned 2 or 3 responses, like some days back. This is not very usual. Election Commission has increased the silent hours of 48 to 72 hours. It's not usual. And it is not usual to take away the whole timing of campaign in the evening and the night and to limit it only to daytime. It is not very usual to cut down a significant aspect, ways of certain types of rallies and roadshows. It's not easy. And to give credit to political stakeholders, I wish this type of wisdom had come a little before for them, because the political parties and candidates are top leaders. They represent the will of the people and they command a lot of following. And they're not school kids. The responsibility which has been shown recently in the past couple of weeks in terms of disengaging from intensification of rallies, disengagement from the crowd in a physical sense, so that life and health of those people are protected, this could have come a little before. Because they are responsible entities, they are political leaders, they hold positions, they also are supposed to represent people's interest. So if it had come a little before, it would have been very nice. Political parties and candidates have also displayed, just I'm finishing, certain level of responsibility, which goes well.
Mr. Raut, these are unprecedented times, no doubt, as what you mentioned. The Election Commission also, for the first time, you have seen the Election Commission inside out. Invoking of the DM Act, the Disaster Management Act, the Election Commission did so. In its communications in the last 2-3 phases, it has said that the COVID appropriate behavior has to happen. And it has also asked that appropriate and effective communication strategies need to be put in place to inform the voters about safe polling. So how do you see this particular transition from a normal polling? Your concerns are more about EVM functioning properly and security management and other things, to coming to a stage where the Disaster Management Act has to be invoked so that anyone who's not following the protocols properly is penalized and taken to task with a very strict hand of action.
Very correctly said, Nilav. And the Disaster Management Act, in this case, the State Disaster Management Act in West Bengal, they largely hold the sway and hold the key in terms of management of people and management of the way things are conducted. And let's just remember for a moment that Election Commission's force or the staff or the personnel during the elections are not its own. Under the constitutional arrangement, the state, whether it is center or the state government, is supposed to provide all the resources to the Election Commission to manage the elections, right? These days they have started including from the Bihar election, which was the first election and the largest election in times of COVID anywhere in the world. And it was seen as a tremendous success. And in fact, the basic literature, the basic, call it SOP, for conducting election during COVID times in India, anywhere in the world, has been derived from these elections in Bihar. So we have the central paramilitary forces, police forces. We have all types of officers who belong to All India Central Services. We also have now health authorities and health officers. All join up and they come under the disposal of the Election Commission of India to make it a successful, smooth, free, fair, transparent and participative election. That's how the things have happened. Now, in this situation, the Disaster Management Act gives a lot of width and all capacity to the state government of West Bengal in this case to enforce what we all are concerned about. The COVID protocols like physical distancing, like masking, like washing hands in sanitizer, and following all protocols in all situations. But perhaps it has not been because of several reasons. The enforcement has not been to the satisfaction of one and all. We just got some numbers today. For example, the face masks which have been provided are about 2.5 crores. And perhaps under this arrangement, perhaps the hand gloves are to the extent of 9 crores. I mean, everything, PPE, hand sanitizers and visors for face, plastic bags, covered dustbins. We cannot perhaps imagine, and it's not for no reason that the election management, elections in India are called the largest event management exercise in the world. All these are required in the COVID times. So the state, under the Disaster Management Act, is going to be to enforce this, should enforce it effectively in all 294 constituencies, and with the nodal health officers being in position and their enforcement people in position, all material and equipment provided. So this is what is expected. You just mentioned the interaction that happened today between the Election Commission and the state authorities. Everyone's position was given, and the importance of doing it even better was re-emphasized by the Election Commission of India.
So Raut, as someone who's been at the Election Commission, where the mandate and the target obviously is that more and more participative election, you just said that. What would you suggest to our listeners, especially in the state of West Bengal who are listening to this broadcast, that what should they undertake as voters and as polling staff, how to go about ensuring that the voting happens with the safe environment and following all the COVID protocols, so that everyone who's listening to us can understand the facts more better now that you've worked in the Election Commission earlier?
I think fortunately, the elections that we are talking about, these 5 state assemblies, including West Bengal, have been highly participative elections. We have a very politically alert electorate. It should be universal participation. Everyone whose name is on the electoral roll should come and vote. That's first. But we have the additional responsibility to make sure that all the people should come and vote with a mind that is free from inducement. And besides COVID, a lot of other things have happened, Nilav, in this election which should have been avoided. Some amount of physical and mental violence, some amount of mutual acrimony which has really vitiated the election field in West Bengal. So the voter, when he comes, he or she should come without any type of fear, any type of pressure, or any type of induced mind. In a free and fair mind, exercise his franchise for the sake of himself, for his constituency, for the state, and for the country. Third, he or she should be extremely alert to save and protect his or her own life and health, and that of others as well in this COVID pandemic time.
So what exactly happens, and now that we've seen an unprecedented time where the Election Commission has ensured, tried to put in guidelines, the measures also for the overall health and the security of the polling process, and it goes to the May 2nd also. So I think these protocols have to be followed till the strong room security and till May 2nd. That would be the correct position to say.
Now we are in a situation where around the country, these protocols are the only 2 things which are available to face this pandemic. One is the vaccine, the second is COVID protocols. So I think in a way, these are extended into the state of West Bengal in the context of election. We are talking about, because vaccine is as per their own periodicity, as per the own regulation. But COVID protocol is something to be availed of and to be observed at all times. Because election is typically an outdoor activity. So when people are generally advised to stay at home, but election broadcast has to be outside. So people have to be doubly careful when they travel from their homes to the polling station and interact with various polling processes. And they don't really get into any trouble for themselves and for others.
Right. We hope that the elections remaining last 2 phases are followed with all the COVID appropriate behavior, so that everyone is safe and secure, the voters and also the polling staff. Thank you very much for joining, Mr. Raut.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to a discussion on COVID safety protocols during assembly elections. The participants were Akshay Raut, former Director General of Election Commission of India, and Nilab Srivastav, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. You can listen to it on our mobile app News on AIR. This program is also available on our website newsonair.com. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsttalks@gmail.com.